Hello. Today we will be interviewing Beaconhill. Now, if you don't know, Beaconhill is a writer of many stories, including The Student, Heredity, Cult City, Blood, Brockton Look, probably a ton of things I'm also missing. Wolf, for example. And yeah, thank you, Beaconhill. How did you discover Worm?
The author of some fanfic I was reading at the time recommended it, and I wound up liking it a lot. Drifted over to space battles, read some fanfic, wrote some fanfic, and just kinda never stopped. I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. You have a series called Morning Worm, where you write snippets and the aim is to write every single day. This seems like an awesome way to get yourself to write more. What inspired you to start doing this? Any tips to people on how to maintain this habit if they want to start writing more?
So Morning Worm actually changes depending on what I want to get out of it. The first season of Morning Worm, I worked on my update pace, that was when I had it be once a day. I've tried working more on inventiveness and polish this season, so my update rate has slowed down a little. This is getting into spoiler territory, but I think what I'm going to try doing next season in Morning Worm is return to once a day, but try to add more original fiction and original elements. After all the worm fic I've written, I'm honestly starting to feel a little mined out, so getting a chance to do different stuff will probably do me some good. I'm expecting the mix to be maybe 1/3 straight worm fic, 1/3 worm with heavily original elements, and 1/3 straight original fiction. Something like that. I'm also hoping to start mixing it up more within worm fic, maybe focusing on stuff further out from my comfort zone. But I'll see how it ends up actually working. Half the fun is seeing the way my plans go wrong, especially in Morning Worm.
Fair enough. What was your favorite part of Worm?
I'll admit, it's been quite a while since I've reread the whole thing, so I might be a little rusty. But, thinking back, there are two scenes that really stick out in my memory. The scene where Taylor got outed was one of them, and the battle on the oil rig right after Cyan went crazy was another. I've never actually written a version of either of these scenes, but you can see themes from them popping up quite often. I think my tastes have changed quite a bit since I actually read Worm, though, I've soured a lot on the Slaughterhouse 9 after seeing them butchered so often.
Yeah, besides maybe Jack Slash aptly enough, and Thinker Six's Weaver 9, there really aren't that many good portrayals, are there? Heredity is not only one of the older fics in the fandom, but also one of the only ones that's been rewritten and edited. What prompted the rewrite? Heredity is not only one of the older fics in the fandom, but also one of the only ones that's been rewritten and re-edited. What prompted the rewrite?
That's probably not as interesting an answer as you were hoping. Basically, I really botched an important reveal, spoilers, but the idea that Amy's dad left her something behind, and I decided I really needed to go back and fix it if I was going to get the story back on track. So I did that, and things got rolling again. Except I haven't updated that in a while. Well, I'll get to that sometime.
Fair enough. I know how it is. What was your favorite thing to write?
Ouch, that's a hard one. Aside from the picking favorites thing, I've written so much stuff that it's hard to sort out. One recent one that was a lot of fun was the start of I Am Skitter. The first couple chapters of that, I was just purely floating on air, new ideas everywhere, and it all just seemed to be coming together basically perfectly. It was a very purely me fic, especially in those first few chapters. I was having barrels of fun, and I couldn't believe that anyone else was even interested in reading it, let alone loving it the way folks did. Another place I tend to have a lot of fun is original fiction. The lows are definitely lower, when I know I've screwed up and I post it anyway because I have to learn somehow. But, conversely, the highs can be pretty darn high. The first chapter of Flights with Dragons, and the ongoing Cobalt series in Morning Worm, especially, getting away from Worm for a little while and letting my imagination go wild on something completely different can be really exhilarating.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's always really nice. It feels like your stories exist on a spectrum where most are heavily on the horrific dark side, Yeah, I Am Skidder, The Brockton Log, Cult City, From High Above, Shadow, Blood, etc. And there's a few in the middle, Heredity, The Student, and one or two on the fun, fluffy side, Wolf. Any reason for favoring dark stories?
That's an interesting thing to ask me. I wouldn't really say that I do, for the most part. One thing I do think I write a lot are actually light, fluffy stories in dark worlds. Blood is a love story, and Cult City is a Taylor meets Lisa story where Lisa is up to something interesting beforehand. Something I mentioned a few times in the Brockton Looks thread is that obviously it's a Lovecraftian horror to Emma, the point of view character, but Taylor genuinely thinks she's in one of those cheesy friendship movies. Sophia is a lost fishwoman, with a yearning to go home that she doesn't quite understand, and Taylor sorts things out and brings her home, one of their human friends in tow. And the interesting thing is that while Taylor is obviously apparent to us, I imagine the audience for the Brockton Look is mostly human. She isn't completely wrong, either. Sophia really is a lost fishwoman, and she really is going to be happier and better off under the sea. I've actually seriously considered writing another version of the story from Taylor's point of view, because it's just so different from how the readers experienced it. But there are a couple fics that I've written or am writing that are really pretty dark, I think. In general, those happen because I want to explore an idea, and that idea happens to go toward dark places. I Am Skidder, along with a couple of other things I've written, this is not completely a unique theme, sort of formed around the feeling you get when you realize you've been tricked, and you've really messed up, and you've just got a pit in your stomach and it's the worst thing in the world. From High Above is about, well, what happens when you're suddenly one of the most powerful people in the world. I don't usually like to write purely bleak fiction for no reason, but if I have an idea and that idea takes me in a direction, well, that's where I'm going to go.
Fair enough, I'm that way inclined myself a lot of the time, I find. It seems like, speaking of which though, it seems like balancing the fluff in a dark setting would be quite hard, especially because it feels to me like it just makes it darker due to the contrast. How do you do that kind of thing?
I feel like it's usually not absolute darkness that people are paying attention to, so much as the way characters react to it. Like, in Blood, the main characters are both murderers and it's all around quite dark. But neither of the main characters is really in a dark place themselves, if that makes sense to you. They're both teenage girls, making friends with each other, and while dark stuff happens, they're both still pretty comfortable with it. The funny thing is that this worked even when I didn't want it to. A lot of people really liked the bad ending, even though it meant Taylor going on a murder rampage. It doesn't work so well, though, when bad things happen to the main characters. I think this is why a lot of people didn't like the Brockton Look so much. How do you find inspiration? Also, where do you stand on the inspiration versus dedication, that is writing when you have an idea versus forcing yourself to write habitually, debate? I find inspiration all over the place, really. Anything I've done, seen, or read recently could turn into a fic. I don't force myself to write when I don't have ideas, but there are so many ideas floating around that there ought to be something I can write anytime.
Fair enough. I personally enjoyed it, but, I can see why. How do you find inspiration? Also, where do you stand on the inspiration versus dedication, the writing when you have an idea versus writing, forcing yourself to write habitually debate?
I find inspiration all over the place, really. Anything I've done, seen, or read recently could turn into a fic. I don't force myself to write when I don't have ideas, but there are so many ideas floating around that there ought to be something I can write anytime.
Huh. Guess that works as well. What's your favorite fan fiction and why?
I've probably been here too long to give an all-time favorite. But I think definitely the author I've been most interested in reading these days has been Harbin, and his one-shot thread especially.
That thread's always a nice surprise of interesting things to read. Any other recommendations?
Let's see. In recent fics I really liked Beaconhill's Throttle, Harbin's Rend and Twinnings, and Anathematic's Headspace. In dead fics that I've still really been missing, perhaps Firefly by Shujin? I have enormous lists full of long dead threads, but I'm really not sure how far back you want me to go. It may be worth calling out Reconciliation by LD 1449 as both awesome and complete. That's a real rarity. With that said, I've been a little behind on recent stuff lately. The Worm Ideas thread is traditionally where I find new fix, and that's just been a fire hose lately. I haven't been able to keep up even skimming a lot of it.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, thank you very much for your time, Beaconhill, and I'll see you guys next week.